Thanks for joining us. Week 5, Getting Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, Racial Reconciliation Conversations. As a reminder, this is a group of local believers who decided it was long overdue sitting down to listen to our black brothers and sisters educate us about historical injustice, inequality, oppression, as well as current day. Also to talk to us about their life perspective, things they've been through, attitudes, institutions, ideas that still show up with racial inequality, injustice, oppression. This week it's unique. We're talking more about cultures. Talk about Black History Month. Remember, these conversations aren't perfect. You're going to feel tension. There'll be awkward silences. But it's meant to encourage you to have these conversations in your local church with your friends. How can we intercede, advocate, walk together, ultimately to reflect the gospel of Jesus Christ and the kingdom of God? That's who we're called to be. As a reminder, the questions will be at the end of the video. Thanks for joining us. Okay, tonight's verse is 2 Timothy 2:11 through 13. Here is a trustworthy saying. If we died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure with him, we will also reign with him. If we disown him, he will disown us. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. Kawana, will you pray for us?
Heavenly Father, we just thank you again, Lord, for allowing us to see this 30th day in the month of June. You have brought us 6 months into the year of 2020. Yes, Lord, it is nothing like we thought that it would be looking like, but God, we know that you are sovereign in all things. And we just thank you, Lord, for right now, just for us as brothers and sisters in the faith, Lord, just to be able to talk with each other, Lord, just to have open conversations, to have frank conversations that are needed to unify your body as you would have us to be, Father, so we can just once again further your gospel in all things. And we just ask, Father, that you would just bless those that have assembled, bless those that will hear, and just bless these conversations tonight in Christ's name. Amen.
Cheryl.
All right, here we go. First question. While acknowledging there is a tension in the history of all ethnicities, how do we identify, remember, and appreciate history? Can we acknowledge and appreciate Confederate leadership and monuments while still fighting racism? I know that's a loaded question, but Keisha.
As far as the monuments go, for those who they're honoring people who have done injustice to others as far as race. If that's the case, I have no problem with those coming down. I think that they can come down in ways that are carefully thought out, but I know that sometimes it's when there's people that are angry and they're just taking them down. So I think that there could be legislation that can bring them down. And just me personally, I think a lot of people are putting their nationalism before caring for others and not looking to see how that could affect someone else.
That's a great point, Keisha. Kiwana, what are your thoughts?
So, I'm going to echo what Keisha said, because I mean, yes, it's history, but it gives to me an inaccurate history. Once again, if the only thing that you see is just a monument, because once again, think if someone were to come over here from another country to observe us, and they have all these statues of, oh, well, this person was in this war and this person was in this war. Why do we put monuments up in the first place? To honor someone, right? So do we want to honor treachery? Do we? So I would say yes, they need to be taken down. Can they be put into a museum? Yes. Please, once again, because it's history. So yes, put them in a museum where everything, where the whole picture can be seen. So yeah, so that is my thought on monuments.
So, Kiwana, are you saying to acknowledge history by putting it in a museum, but not celebrating those people by making a monument to them because of other things that they've done?
Correct.
Okay, making sure. Okay, Tim, what do you say?
I would echo the same thing that Kawana and Keisha did. I'd say that if you look at it, there is racial tension, and then how do we address that? Because we teach history, teach it fully. And I've said this in the past, and then I'll keep saying it. Do not teach the good, the bad, the ugly. Put everything in there and let it fall where it may. So, we would have a true understanding of where history lies. Now, with the monuments, there is a right way to take those monuments down. Remove them, put them in a museum. That's where I feel that's where they need to be. Once again, we don't need to be honoring someone that that their Confederacy's sole purpose was to enslave. Is to keep their industry going, is to keep their money maker. No, remove that. Let's learn from that, and let's move forward from that. Once again, this country is built on a foundation of that. If your house was built on a foundation that is not good, that is bad, what do? You tear it down. Not just the house, you tear the foundation, you rebuild. I know that's hard to do, but we need to rebuild. We need to really see, how do we tear this down? How do we rebuild it together?
That's a great analogy. Thank you, Tim. Lauren, what do you say to this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Can you hear me, first of all? I know we had some audio. Okay. I'm not sure what else there is to add. I think everybody kind of said what I was thinking. A lot of the people that we have monuments up to have done some pretty horrible things. And like what Kawana was saying, they're usually put up with no context, kind of just name of person fought in this war, and there's no other history behind who this person is, what did they do. And those monuments don't serve as a good reminder of things for a lot of people. So I do believe that they should be taken down. I think this goes also to like names of schools, names of buildings. And I think those things need to be moved to a museum with context.
That's a really good point about context, Lauren. That's really good. Michael, what do you say, especially Michael, because somebody asked you, can we acknowledge and appreciate Confederate leadership and monuments while still fighting racism?
Right, so I would just echo everything that's been said by Keisha, Kiwana, Tim, and Lauren. I even watched an interview of Robert E. Lee's great-grandson, and he basically said he believes monuments, statues, etc., should be placed in a museum where they could be given their proper context. And so I would agree with that. It's already been echoed. And so another way to think about it, and then Lauren hit on this as far as schools. What would it look like to ask a Jewish student to go to Adolf Hitler High? Think about that now. Where is the context? Where is the sensitivity to that? So ask a Jewish student to go to Adolf F. Hitler High.
Can I just add to what Michael just said too? And what's so crazy or almost like twisted, like my background, is that a lot of schools that were named for Confederate leaders, Robert E. Lee or what have you, they started out as predominantly white schools. Now, if you go and check the demographics of that school, it's now completely Black. So now you have Black students attending a Robert E. Lee high school. And it's, and it's similar just to what Michael said. It's like, wow, no one even thought to, hey, we should change that name.
Okay, here's the second question. Is code switching only for Black people? Is it a useful tool used by everyone in dealing with different kinds of people, or is it a tool used by Black people to protect themselves? Tim, let's start with you on this one.
My personal thing, I think everybody code switches. You might not, you might not realize it, but you do. I mean, think about going into a restaurant that's not native to this country. I mean, they're not code switching, they're just talking their native tongue. But, in a sense, it's almost code switching because they know this, they know what American speaks predominantly, but yet they speak a different way. I mean, it's, for me, I code switch to kind of, get in where I fit in. I guess that's the term I want to use, because I just, I use just to navigate my surroundings. And so if I'm around my family, Jennifer can tell you, I mean, I'm kind of different. But when I get around people that, I need to be more accepted or at least in my mind, I need to be more accepted by, I got to kind of tone it down, speak a different way, and, just get in where I fit in.
Okay, Kiwana, we talked about that earlier this week. What is your response to that?
So it's kind of funny. So Michael and I, we caught this TED talk, and this guy who was, that was his whole conversation. It was totally on code switching. So I took a couple of notes, and so here's his definition of it. In social linguistics, it's the use of one dialect, register, accent, or language variety over another, depending on social or cultural context, to project a specific identity. So that is his definition of code switching. And with that, he also gave us this little acronym called LIE, L-I-E, LIE. So learn, implement, and embrace. And he goes on to discuss how, once again, if there would be no need for code switching if the minority was accepted by the majority. But instead, the minority must conform to the majority, so therefore you have code switching. So so it could be eliminated, according to him in his TED Talk, if the majority learn to lie, learn, implement, and embrace. And so, it's yes, like Tim said, it is a tool, mostly yes for acceptance. And another definition that I came up with was that it's a tool to combat prejudging, gain acceptance, and it can be used as a form of caution as well as protection, given your situation.
Kiwana, you were saying something earlier this week about how you felt like Black people have to code switch to protect themselves, as opposed to just code switching, when you go to work or when you're at home or whatever. But can you speak to that a little more, how you feel like Black people have to, or it's out of necessity to code switch?
Yeah, so I'll give you the example that the same gentleman gave us on the TED Talk. Once again, he was a very big guy. So 6'4", really big, maybe 285, looks like maybe close to 300 pounds or so. So he's tall, he's dark, he's bald, he's, very commanding presence, right? But he's Black. So one of the things that he would do when he's walking into a room, he said the first thing he makes sure he does is he smiles. He smiles the whole time so that the people, the majority that are looking at him, the first thing that they're going to see is a smile on his face. Because a smile does what? It disarms. So therefore, you're not going to think I am a threat if you see smiles. He will make sure that he would purposely move himself off the opposite side so that no one in an elevator or no one in the street from him has to clench that purse or what have you, giving them their personal space. So that is one way, once again, that code switching. Because I mean, in a typical, depending on where I'm going, I'm not going to have a smile on my face. You just may see whatever it is that I'm feeling. But in certain situations, you may have to fix that face. You may have to change that voice, lighten it up just a tad, because then I am no longer feeling, or you may not feel threatened by me, by just a lightening of the voice, a smile on the face, maybe just a rounding back of the shoulders. Yeah, I mean, just things like that, as opposed to me coming at you. And when I say coming at you, I don't mean like I'm going to like attack you, but allowing me to be me, would you be threatened by it? So.
Okay, Keisha, what do you say to that?
I'll just add that sometimes it's also a level of comfort when you're around your community that you're really comfortable with. It just automatically, you just go into, just being more laid back and relaxed.
So you feel like you don't have to code switch?
Right.
Okay.
And I never really thought about other races code switching, but like Tim said, I think that would be something that would be something that other people do as well.
Okay. Lauren, what do you say?
Everyone has such great points. I'm trying to think, what else can I contribute? I mean, personally, I've used code switching as kind of a protection as far as, the prejudging part. If I'm in a professional setting and I'm the only Black person there, I kind of don't want someone to judge me by, how I would talk with my friends. So I would change how I would talk. I think also code switching can go even deeper to how we dress too. So, a lot of Black women with the pressure to straighten, perm, wear wigs and weaves, to be closer to kind of the accepted beauty standard, because those wearing your natural hair was not accepted in the workplace. I mean, now Black women wear weaves, wigs, that sort of things, as protective styles to protect our natural hair anyways. But, a lot of the times that's used in the professional setting as a form of code switching. They had to pass, I can't remember which state, but they had to pass a law to say that you cannot discriminate against people for their natural hair, which is ridiculous. The hair that grows out of my head is what is getting me in trouble. Something I cannot control is getting me in trouble. And there are children who are being sent home because their hair, once again, that naturally comes out of their head is seen as distracting and against dress code. So, I mean, even to that extent, to how you dress, how you act, how you walk, how you talk can be seen as code switching. And I would say for a lot of Black people, but for me personally, that came from a area of not wanting to be judged, by wanting to be accepted. So.
Wow, I didn't have any idea about that law. Michael, what do you say to this?
I would just echo, everything that's been said. Everyone does it, as Tim said. I just feel people of color have to do it more so to fit into majority culture. That's all I would add.
So in talking about code switching, most of us go to the same church, and, a lot of what we've been taught over, even, the last 20 years we've been there, when we go to other contexts, and many of us have traveled, we submit to whatever culture we're in. We eat those foods, we try to learn the language, we submit ourselves to whatever our partners want on the ground. We want to really submit ourselves because they're the primary culture and we're just there to help. So in light of that, do you think that when we are here in the United States, that the idea of the culture of the United States is one that is a white culture, and that's why Blacks are forced to code switch here, because America is considered a white culture, and that's why it's different for people on the mission field, and then when they come back here, America equals white culture, so now I'm the majority and I don't have to code switch, but maybe you would have to code switch. Michael?
Yes, I mean, I think you summed it up well this year. I think that's exactly right. And you don't code switch in environments that you feel you don't have to, where you feel comfortable, so to speak. Like I don't code switch in my home with Kiwana because I and Bethany. Why? Because we're the majority here, right? So I think you summed it up well in saying that.
So for our two couples who are here tonight that are interracial couples, do you have to code switch even with your spouse? I know I'm treading on thin ice, and I'm sorry, but Lauren?
Yeah. No. I feel like I'm very much myself with AJ. I think at first with his family, because I didn't, especially first meeting them, like I didn't know them. I didn't know what kind of situation I was going into. You always have that kind of a little bit of like fear of like, I am going to be the only Black person in this room. I don't know what his family is going to think of him bringing home a Black girl. So at first, I think it was a little bit of that there, but now they're cool. I'm comfortable with them. I don't feel like I need to code switch with AJ at all.
Okay, Tim, what about you?
No, Jennifer and I will be married 20 years in January, so I think the code switching is behind us now. I mean, we are who we are. When I get around our family, I don't, we go to, visit our family down south in another state, and they're cool. I mean, they are who they are. I'm who I am, and I get along with them now. On her mother's side, I've not done that, so that's still taboo. I have met I've met my sister-in-law, but I've not met my brother-in-law because of my color. So, I mean, it is what it is. But
Okay, moving to the next question. If a white stranger stopped and introduced themselves to you at a store for the purpose of letting you know that they're learning and trying to do better, would that freak you out or encourage you? Would that make you feel belittled or seen? Let's start with Keisha.
That would not freak me out or make me feel bewildered. I would just be appreciative that they thought to be concerned about, me or others that are Black or persons of color. So I wouldn't be offended.
Okay. Kiwana, what say you?
Both. I would be a little freaked out and but encouraged at the same time. I would feel seen, not belittled. So yeah.
Okay, Tim?
I don't think it'll bother me. It's kind of crazy because my boys notice this a lot. Whenever we go somewhere and I'm going through and I see another Black person, Michael, what do? We give a head nod, just like that, and it's universal. And when I go somewhere, I try to make sure I make eye contact with different people. Once again, just to make them feel comfortable. And I've had people come up and then just talk to me, not at this level. Hey, I'm just trying to learn. But I mean, it doesn't bother me, or it wouldn't bother me in the future if like someone did that. Like I think Keisha was saying, I would welcome it. I would be like thankful. Somebody is doing some hard work. Maybe it's something that they didn't want to do, but they're doing. Maybe they're feeling uncomfortable, but I got to get through this tension barrier to. If I'm going to do this, I have to do it. So maybe I'm the first person, or maybe I'm the third person, but hopefully they will just continue to do that. So it's encouraging. It's encouraging.
Okay, Michael, what do you think?
Same thing. I would feel highly encouraged and seen, and that would be an awesome day for me. So I would be highly encouraged and feel seen.
Okay, Lauren, what say you?
I think it'd be a little like weird at first. Because obviously, the stranger coming to me and just like, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm reading, how to be anti-racist. So it'd be a little like, okay, cool, good for you. But at the same time, just what everyone else said, like that's encouraging to know that, someone felt the need to come up to me and say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm here. I get it. I'm with the cause. I'm learning. So I think that would be encouraging. Yeah.
Okay, Henry, I know you have a different perspective because you're not living in the South so much, but how would you feel if somebody came up to you and told you they were trying to learn and to do better? What would you think?
Actually, I've met quite a lot of people that have told me that here. I remember one time sitting in subway on the metro, and then this elderly gentleman just came over and said, I saw you look very different from me. And he introduced himself. And I know you're not from here, you're from Africa. But then he said, we're trying to change here, and I'm trying to learn where you're from, and I explained that I was from Zambia. And of course, I'd already learned about some of the stuff that's already going on here. And then that was an encouragement, really, nothing else, but a huge, huge encouragement. It wasn't like I was afraid of him or anything, but it was just good to see.
Okay, how many of you white people would be freaked out if a stranger came up to you in the store and just said, hey, I just want to say I see you? How many of you would be freaked out? Raise your hand. Me? Most of us? Oh, okay, just making sure. Making sure. Okay. Because when we brought one of ours home, we got stopped a lot by people telling us how to do her hair. And I was just completely shocked because it was strangers. But I was also appreciative that people would give me information. It was helpful. Okay, this is a loaded question. We've narrowed this down a little bit. It says, in regard to white people who have fought racism for years, but now realize that what they've done isn't enough, how do you recommend they process that responsibility being placed on them? What do they need to focus on as they move forward? Lauren, we'll start with you this time.
I was talking to AJ about this question, and from what I'm understanding, these are people who are like been in the trenches, with the fight, and it can be discouraging to know that like a lot of the same problems that we've had before. But I think what's important to also realize is that a lot of good has happened. A lot of change has happened. AJ and I would not have been able to be married in my grandparents' lifetime. So that's something that's good that's happened. I can go to school, and my little sisters can go to school with their white friends, and not have to worry about that. So there's a lot of good. And I think that we should focus on that as well. Knowing that we still have a lot to do. There's still a lot we need to accomplish, a lot to fight for, but also recognizing that there has been good changes. As far as things to focus on going forward, I would say policy. We all know that racism is a heart issue, but we can't change everybody's heart. So I think we need to focus on make sure there's policies in places to where, oppressed people can at least have like the legal protection. Even if we can't change everybody, there's at least a legal portion of that that can be implemented, if that makes sense.
Can you give an example of that, Lauren? Like a policy where you would say?
I think, once again, I can't. I feel like I consume so much news and information nowadays that I can't remember specifics. But I remember one state outlawed no-knock warrants, which allowed kind of just bust into your house, which is how Breonna Taylor was murdered. So that's a policy that is being implemented for the protection of Black people. So something like that. Can you think of anything else? That's the first one that kind of is on the top of my head about that one.
That's a good one. Yeah. Michael, what do you say to this question?
Right. And just amen and everything Lauren said. And in addition to what she said, I think starting with just, learning the history of racism, making sure you're solid on that so you can recognize patterns. If certain things start repeating, I would say that first. Also, as an encouragement, I would say learn the history of white people who have worked hard in racism to give you some encouragement. So I'll give you 3 names right now. Juliet Hampton Morgan, learn about her story. Peter Norman, learn about him, his story. And William Moore, and many others. So learn those white people who worked hard, what they had to deal with, and those struggles, those obstacles, and that can be an encouragement. Also, I would say challenge other white people in your life, those in your circle, to think critically about racism. What conversations, what does that look like? How are you talking about it with your kids? So to think critically about it. And finally, and we've discussed some of this already in this group, but question your own assumptions and beliefs about racism. In what ways can you get better, and can you improve, and what blind spots that still may be revealed to you as you may be in the race, right? And so, and I think those are what I would say would be a good focus, a good starting point.
That's really good. And Michael, will you put that in the chat? Will you put those names in the chat so I can make sure we have all those? Tim, what do you say to this question?
I would encourage them, it's a long, hard fight. It's a daily grind that we, to keep doing. And I appreciate that. And I was listening to or I was watching a Zoom call that was recorded, I think last week or so. There was a pastor talking about speaking up and after speaking out. So, speaking up to God, it's easy to speak up, but speaking out to the one, to other whites, it may, that may come at a cost. Are you willing to make that cost? Are you willing to do that? And that's what that's what this country needs. That's what we really need people to do, is to really speak out to others, and then, become firm in it, and whatever happens after that, let it happen. But know that, you are speaking out, for the rights of others. So.
Okay, Kawana, what do you say?
Yes, so definitely want to echo what's already been stated. I mean, those very valid, very solid points, very encouraging points as well. I guess I would just have to offer more encouragement as well, I guess, as even a challenge to that. I mean, thank you for how you have stood up and so forth. But, we're still breathing, so that means there's still work to be done. So, it's like going off to war, onward Christian soldier, right? We still have work to be done. It's still work to be done. So, and even okay, well, where, here's like a challenge. All right, so you did ABC, but where do you think you may have dropped the ball now that we're at X, Y, and Z? We got some more letters in between. So where did you maybe rest on your laurels at? And where do you think that maybe you could pick up the fight from now to just continue to be a help, to continue just to speak up, and everyone has a gift, a talent. How could you further use that gift and talent to bring other brothers and sisters along? So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the next question, and then I'm going to start with you on this one, Keisha. Okay. Does having February as Black History Month prevent us from teaching Black history included in what we teach every other month? Removing Black History Month may not be optimal, but what would actually improve the learning of our school children? Keisha?
So I do believe that learning about Black history is mostly delegated to February, and sometimes not even that. Just in comparison, when I was in high school, we did have the programs and we were learning and we did book reports and projects, but not so much for my son who's currently a senior now. So I do believe that we could incorporate that just as like you're learning about the things you learn about, just add in the things that, you know, Black people have contributed. It's not just Black history, it's American history. And just a practical thing, my mother, she gives me and my family calendars, and they are from South Carolina where we grew up, and they just have daily history facts about Black people. So just incorporating it and being intentional in that, and just adding to what you've already learned at what they've contributed.
Kiwana, as a teacher and as a mom of 2 girls who you're also teaching at home, how do you address this with Black history?
So as I'll tackle the professional educator side first. So coming out of the traditional classroom, my first answer to the first part of that question is absolutely not. It does not prevent it. In this long thing called the course of study that teachers have to go by, you know, we have standards. So these are the things that we need to hit. We need to hit these things in the classroom to make sure that the students will do what they need to do on these benchmark tests and what have you. Okay, so once again, we just need to hit these things and just to make sure they score, right? Black history as a whole, it's not very inclusive. Once again, we're going to hit on Martin Luther King Jr. We're going to hit on the Civil Rights Movement. We're going to hit on a few names here and there. You know, we're going to hit on George Washington Carver as a scientist. But, you know, there's so many other accomplishments that go unnoticed. And because it's not evenly intertwined, then we only see Black History Month as this one standout alone. We're going to just take everything Black, and we're just going to pull it out and we're just going to throw it into this one month. And we're just going to try to get as much out of that month of those 28 days as we can. Okay, and once again, so it's the same thing with Women's History Month in March. So we're just going to only highlight women in history during the month of March. Is it the only time we can highlight a woman in history? No, same way that we can not only just highlight just a couple of Black people throughout the month of February. Because we were actually, I think, was it another TED Talk, Michael? I'm not sure. But to say that we only just have Black history, once again, we're saying that this group wasn't as influential in the development of our society. And we all know that's far from the truth. I mean, if your father or grandfather has a pacemaker, think a Black person, because that was invented by a Black person. You know, our current cell phones, things like that. There were Black inventors involved with that. Even some of the, even with the obstetricians and so forth. Black people were involved with that. And so it's just not to say, oh my gosh, we just have to just focus on this month. Please don't. We need to focus on putting all history together and not just single out just at one point. And for our daughters, I mean, every February is definitely Black History Month. We are, I saw this on the internet, we are blacker than black during February. So, because one reason, that's when I can find more resources. I can go to the library in February and I can find more resources during that time. More things are highlighted so that I can inform my girls about where they've come from. But honestly, this COVID season has been kind of a crazy blessing in a way, because we have just, those of you that keep up my Facebook, I mean, we've just been highlighting all kind of movies here lately. So we just have been having some family cinema time. If we're Facebook friends, please go check out some of the stuff that we have been watching. Just once again, it's just so they can know this is where we have come from. This is the struggles, this is the sacrifices that other people have made, just so you can be right here where you are.
Yep. we're all looking at a color monitor because of Mark Dean, right? Tonight. So you can thank a Black person for that. Okay, Tim Hurd.
Sorry. History is history, and Blacks complement whites, whites complement Blacks. Put it all together. I know February, and look at it. February is the shortest days of the month. It has the shortest days. So you give us a month with the least amount of days to kind of focus, to kind of try to cram everything into. But like I said, complement what history, we've got to do our research and say, okay, the things that we're teaching right now about the grounds of history, how does Blacks complement that? And then vice versa, find something that Blacks are in that, how does whites complement that? So we got to bring it together to really, to once again lay that foundation, just to firm it up. Because if we start doing that, and that we start showing that, that gives a broader perspective of what true American history is. And then these kids coming up will have a better mindset. And maybe we won't do a number 3 of race relations, kind of what we're doing right now. Give them an opportunity to really learn what history is. And then, like you were saying, there are plenty of people out there that we should be learning about going through this. It's not just the Martin Luther King's or Rosa Parks. There's plenty of people out there. And so February is good, but February needs to be spread across the rest of the months as well.
That's good. Michael, what do you say, since you're a teacher?
Right, since I'm a teacher, and so I was thinking about this question one way, and then I did a little bit more research on it. So Carter G. Woodson created Black History Week, okay? This later evolved into Black History Month that we know right now. But here's the key part. So he created this now. This is what he said. He hoped that by highlighting Black history for a short period of time, Americans would start to incorporate it into its overall narrative. So that was his original purpose. It's just be for a short period of time, and then it'll just be incorporated into our overall narrative. And now here we sit years later, and we're still having to highlight Black history. So it missed the total mark for the person who created it. He never intended for it to stay like that. And so that's where we're at now.
That's a good point. Okay, Lauren, what do you say?
I don't know how to follow up that. Black history is American history. It should all be incorporated. There's an organization called Girl Trek as in like walking, and it's all about empowering, Black women and getting them outside and walking and, taking care of your health, that sort of thing. And right now they're doing it's called Daughters of Black History boot camp thing, where like every day they pick a Black woman who has contributed something. And I've learned so much about different kinds of women that I knew about, kind of, sort of, and those who I had no idea who were in the fight. So just things like that, programs like that, kind of implement, and it's not February. So you can learn about Black history any day of the year, and I think that's just how it should be. Like Tim was saying, put it all together, and that way, and just teach kids the truth, and that way they can form well-informed opinions and thoughts about history and their history if you give them all the information.
Well-informed, those are key words right there, Lauren. Okay, so question 6 is for people who are not Black. Okay, what has been your experience in the past with Black culture that basically has informed your opinion, up until whenever, but what has been your experience with Black culture? You'll have to raise your hand because I can't see everybody at once. Anybody? David, why don't you go first? I know you didn't raise your hand, but we're related.
Yeah, for me, mine would be a little bit different. Working in pharmaceutical sales, obviously, in and out of all the hospitals and both everything from the white neighborhoods to the poorest of the poor. Growing up, we've talked about this. The radio station 200 yards from our house played black gospel on Sunday mornings. I was always highly attracted to that and wondered why in the world our church sang something so country and Southern Baptist. It kind of clawed my eyes out. So I grew up with an affection and an attention toward black culture. I've never felt threatened, and I've been generally accepted. First time I went to a black church, after about an hour and 20 minutes, and we just started praying. And the guy actually prayed and thanked the Lord that he was borrowing his neighbor's cable. One, I was impressed that somebody would pray like that in church. But secondly, we hadn't even gotten to the preaching. And so, wow. Yeah. So it's been a good experience for me. One that, to my shame, though, that I haven't embraced more and done more to be diversified and invest my time and resources or my position to advocate and intercede. So that would be mine.
And for me, we grew up obviously in the same town, but because we're in the same family, in case you can't tell. But for me, as a high school student, I remember watching an award show maybe on TV, and Lionel Richie was on there, and I thought he was the greatest thing ever. And I remember saying something to that effect and getting in trouble for that. We were also not allowed to watch Different Strokes, although we did behind our parents' backs. And I can't remember some of the other ones we weren't allowed to watch. Facts of Life was one. Anything where there was any kind of integration at all, we were not allowed to watch. And of course, we would sneak and watch those things anyway. And then I remember in college when I went to New York for a summer, and we were assigned to a church in Queens, and it was primarily people from Africa, different parts of Africa, as I recall. And I remember thinking, is this service ever going to end? Because all the people brought food, first of all, and you could smell it. And I mean, 2 hours in, he still hadn't started preaching. And I didn't realize there were levels to finishing, and now I'm about to wrap up meant I'm just finishing point one. And, and then he said something about I'm going to circle the wagons. I thought that was the end. No, that was point two. And so, but I loved it. It was the best summer I'd ever had. I was introduced to a place that didn't sing hymns, only, verses 1, 2, and 4. And people who loved the Lord and showed it. And so that's been my personal experience. Okay, Cheryl, somebody else?
Cheryl, I'll add the one more too, right? So the TV show Good Times, we were allowed to watch that. It was funny until they put up a picture of Black Jesus. And when they put up Black Jesus, that was one of the most controversial things in our home, that was almost sacrilege. And going back to the music thing too, Kawana and I have talked about this, and I've asked her to put a few songs together. Now knowing all that we've heard, not knowing, but all the things we heard and are learning, there's some songs we can go back and hear from the Black gospel realm. Pass Me Not, Rough Side of the Mountain, songs that have a much different context as we hear part of the struggle that will just make you openly weep. I've had good days, I've had hills to climb, right? And hopefully Kawana will put some of those up there so we can listen to those as a resource.
Okay, somebody else. You're okay, Liza.
I had probably a unique upbringing in that I went to an inner city public high school that was 95% Black. So I was the minority there. And I told Chris I didn't realize what a blessing that was. I'm just now starting to appreciate that more. The older I've gotten and the less Black people I'm around. I mean, that was my high school, and I had friends and they came over to my house and spent the night, and it just never really mattered. But as I've gotten older, I have less Black friends, and that bothers me. Like, I want to have the diverse upbringing that I was raised in. Like, I miss that. But one thing Chris asked me is, I was like, it never was a big deal to me. And he was like, but there were some lines probably you couldn't cross. Like, we had friends spend the night who were Black. We went to their house. But like, did I ever think I could date a Black person? For some reason, no. Like, I thought, oh, well, that's the line. And it was never said. My mom was very open and welcoming. And I just thought that that was interesting, as I was like, I was proud of my upbringing in school. Chris asked me that question. He was like, but what was the line? And I realized, I was like, okay, there was an unspoken line there, I guess. Isn't that weird? But yeah.
Yeah, I think for most of us in the South, it was an unspoken line. Somebody else? What has been your experience with Black culture?
I'll go.
Okay, go Jen.
Well, we were laughing about the Black Jesus thing because Tim's sister, we had a very funny moment at her house one year, because when you looked at all the angels closely on her Christmas tree, she had colored them all in. So I didn't realize it until I looked very close, like she had taken a marker and had colored them all in. So, but holidays are so much fun with Tim's family. There's so much love. Everybody's invited. Once you come, you keep coming. There's people who aren't in his family that just show up, and even people who are no longer in the family that still come. And so it's just very welcoming. There's always laughter, food, lots of food, dancing, 50 people. I mean, that's for his family. I can't speak to others, but and just very honest, I would say, like, for his family, but like lots of love and lots of community, I guess is the word.
That's good, Jen. Okay, anybody else before we move to the next question?
I would say, I guess one of the first things like I noticed growing up was that everything was rightfully like elaborate, or like everything always seemed like it wasn't just going to be done, but it was going to be done well, and it was going to be done joyfully. And so like for some of the trying to think of like a clear example, but it's like, for me, like if I was going to the park, I would just be going to the park. But for like a lot of like the Black culture like I grew up in, it was like, well, we're going to go to the park and we're going to do this. We're going to have a whole day's worth of activities,
Food.
and like there's not going to be an end time. It was going to keep going until we were all tired and worn out. And so for me, that's how it was like growing up, because my dad would tell me stories about just him growing up around like the Black community, but he was shunned as a white person for doing so. And so even among like certain family members, like he would be told not to do this, or he was told like, hey, you have a curfew, because my dad was known to go after school to hang out with some of his Black friends. And so, but yeah, I mean, outside of like some of my dad's history, from my experience of like Black culture and community, is like everything is done like joyfully, and like there's like it all has a purpose, like and so like a lot of times I feel like I have this mindset of I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, but it seems like because the Black community was so close knit and it was all like intertwined and interconnected, that it's like, oh, we're not just going to the park, but we're going to the park because we're going to reconnect with family members. We're going to like reconnect with like the community. We're going to all do things together. We're going to bond. And so that was just my experience, was everything was not just done, but it was done with a purpose.
I 100% agree with you. if I was throwing a party, it would have a beginning time, 1 o'clock, everybody leave at 3 o'clock, and I mean out the door at 3 o'clock. And then I go to Kiwata's party, and it is everybody pitch in and help. We're here for 5 hours. My kids thought it was the best birthday party they had ever been to, because it wasn't restricted by time. It was about a celebration, and I have a lot to learn in that area. And my brother is not going to say anything in regard to that. Okay, so the next question is, what was your biggest takeaway from the Phil Vischer video that was put out? We posted it on Facebook, and hopefully all of you have watched it, or you've watched something similar to that. What was your biggest takeaway of that? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. That way we don't get too many people at one time. I don't see anybody. Okay, Lauren.
There was a lot of emotion there. I learned some things, but a lot of it was, wow, this is happening again. The part about how the majority of Americans believe that there was a deterioration of law and order, and it was because of like communism and Black folks who start riots. I've heard that from people before in conversations. How if you're supporting anything that's going on right now with like marches and protests and stuff like that, it's going to usher in communism, which is crazy to me. But it was interesting to see that that mindset was there before, and it's just coming back around in the cycle again. So I think that part was probably the most interesting takeaway for me, was just how much of history, down to the way people are thinking, we're repeating.
Chris?
To me, it was honestly just in the first minute when he outlined the disparity between the average white household and the average Black household. Like, even when you just factor in those demographics and everyone that makes up those demographics, there's still just a tenth. The Black households on average have a tenth of, I can't remember the exact phrase, but the wealth of a white household. And I think that then everything else is just informing that fact. Like, everything else in the rest of the video is just trying to explain, this is why this disparity exists. It's no one thing. It is the system. So it's very overwhelming, but just right off the bat, that was one of the most shocking things to me. I recognize it, but it was still shocking.
Okay. Chris. Amaro, sorry.
Just echoing what Chris just said, I remember at the very end of it, there was a statement made about the average or the ratio of white boys that would go to prison that were born today versus the ratio to Black boys. It was 1 in 23 white boys have a chance of going to prison, and 1 in 4 Black boys. And that was just crippling based on everything else that we had just learned in the previous 17 minutes about how this system just is engineered to submit Black men to prison for, you've got the difference in laws against drugs. It's just a whole pattern of things. And I also felt like, not in any way to make light of the Phil Vischer video, I think it's phenomenal, but I felt like it was like a precept to the 13th. Everything in the 13th is just a tremendous and extremely hysterically loud echo of what Phil points out in his video. So it's a really good precursor to that. And if you want your heart broken, go watch that movie.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think it's a great summary, 15, 17 minutes, something like that. But it really does lead into 13th, which, you would want to preview before you saw that with your children. But it is extremely enlightening on on many, many levels. My kids even said, we've never heard some of these things before. And we had to say, we haven't either. We've never heard this. So well worth the time. Anybody else about the Phil Vischer video? Okay, David, I turn it back over to you.